Everyone. It is, of course, Clorox Bleach, and I will be reading a fanfic. I know, I sound crazy. We're reading Asylum by Damon of Decay. I know, it's a My Little Pony fanfic. I'm a pony fanatic, I guess you would consider it. Now, for once you can't see my face. Ha ha ha. You think I'm ugly? Good. Anyway, let's start this. Asylum, Chapter 1, by Damon of Decay. Twilight Sparkle was jolted awake by the unwelcome sting of bright illumination. Her dreams burned away by harsh chemical light. The shock of being plucked from dreams so unkindly turned her thoughts into molasses. She felt wrong. Her mind was cloudy. Her limbs ached as if she slept wrong all night. Even her horn felt heavy. Twilight groaned. She wanted to go back to sleep, but the incessant light burrowed through her eyelids relentlessly. Her sheets had betrayed her, immobilizing her in a tight cocoon so she couldn't even roll onto her side to shield her face. Relief was impossible. Twilight surrendered to the inevitable and cracked open one eye, and immediately recoiled, blinking away the sudden rush of tears. Spike, she croaked as she lifted her head stiffly. Twilight tried to move. I tried to rub her eyes clear, but couldn't move more than a fraction of an inch. She must have tossed and turned in her sleep last night, and gotten tangled up in her sheets, as tight as the tight embrace of her blankets had pinned her legs to her side. She was too tired and annoyed to feel foolish at the prospect of being trapped by her own bedding. She would be embarrassed about it later.
Spike, I'm in no mood for your games. Shut the blinds already.
Silence mocked her. Twilight vowed to have a talk with Spike about spending too much time with Pinkie Pie and Rainbow Dash. There was a time and place for pranks. Grumbling about childish dragons, she peered through narrowed lids like a nearsighted old mare trying to find their glasses. Everything was just a constantly shifting blur. Shielded from observation, her tears and the painful light assaulting her eyes. Something tickled the back of Twilight's mind as she tried to create meaning out of this indistinct blur her home had become. There was something off, something wrong this morning. She snorted derisively. Of course something's wrong. I'm far too early on my first day off in weeks.
If this is some pony's idea of a prank, I'm not going to be very happy,
she promised. More silence fighting the urge to grind her teeth. Twilight continued to try and focus on her surroundings. Like stepping out into the noon sun after an all-nighter spent studying, something she had more experience with than she cared to admit. Twilight was stuck waiting for her eyes to adjust to the brightness. Reluctantly, the library began to swim into view, rising out of the indistinct waters to form clear shapes and colors. Twilight blinked again, this time in surprise. Despite the pain, her eyes opened even wider. Where am I? Her home had disappeared. The rounded open spaces of the library's inviting oaken interior, had been replaced by a small concrete box. Four walls painted an institutional two-tone coat of green and white that loomed over her maliciously. It was cold, tiny, and clinical, as if the builder had crossed a hospital examination room with a broom closet. The only break in the room's bare walls was a smooth metal door in matching livery, opposite to where she was. The slender window in its center revealing nothing but more soulless walls outside. Ice water trickled down her spine as her eyes lingered on the thick metal bars bolted over the glass. It wasn't a closet, it was a prison. The only furniture in the room was her bed, and it definitely wasn't the one she had fallen asleep in last night. In place of her blankets and hoof-made quilts, there was only a single white sheet, as clean and sterile as everything else in the room. She tried to push it off, but something bit into her fetlock, immobilizing her limbs by her sides. Each attempt to sit upright failed, as she was pushed back against the bed by a firm pressure across her chest. The unseen restraints had pinned her on her back, stuck reclining in an unnaturally straight and stiffening sleeping position. Macabre images of insects trapped in the webs of spiders danced through her mind. A fly screamed in Twilight's voice as a shadow of a spider drew closer. Its only feature baleful eyes of burning fire. It wasn't helping. Thankfully, the straps across her torso were just loose enough to allow her to draw her increasingly rapid breaths. Need to take a breath. Twilight glanced around the room again, in hopes that she had missed something, desperate for any sort of explanation. Her tongue was sandpaper in her mouth, her pupils small pinpricks of fright. Her heart rate quickened as the walls started to close in around her. She needed to wake up. She needed to wake up now. The fog that had settled over her mind since she had been forced to awake clung to her mind with an setting tendency, leaving her thoughts slow and jumbled. It was so hard to focus through the nebulous mire. The scared filly inside her wanted to scream and cry and beg and pray. Why wouldn't this nightmare end? But the part of her that had drawn Celestia's attention, the part of her that had defeated Discord and protected the Crystal Empire and saved Ponyville 12 times, that part of her that was not going to surrender. 12 faces flashed through her thoughts, friends and family, each bearing a smile of encouragement. Strength suffused her body as the memories of her beloved friends ran through her mind. I am not some helpless foal, Twilight said aloud with more confidence than she could muster. Fighting unease with sheer willpower, she steadied herself and calmed her nerves. She naturally fell into familiar routines necessary to call upon the magical forces that saturated Equestria, drawing the strands of arcane energy into herself as easily as another pony might breathe. Most of her life had been spent mastering the magical arts. There was no I can't do this narrator voice. There was no hubris in the declaration that she was one of the most naturally gifted unicorns of a generation. Celestia had told her many times, but each time she had followed with a warning that such a gift was matched with the equally powerful responsibility. Twilight had seen it as her duty, as much as her passion, to be the best apprentice as she could be. And she had learned well. Oh, damn it. I didn't know the mouse was there the entire time. Shit. I'm gonna be screwed. Anyway. Where was I? As she could be. As best apprentice as she could be. And she had learned well. Giving in to her fears would shame Celestia. She wouldn't fail the princess. Not now. Not ever. Ooh, gotta take a breath. Whew. Familiar and reassuring warmth filled her core. The thoughts of her beloved teacher as invigorating as the arcane powers she wielded. Biting her lip, Twilight began to weave the energy into a complex geometric shape with her mind. Telekinesis was one of the most basic powers. Unicorn foals mastered it when they were learning how to read and write. It was something so innate that and well utilized that the spell itself was almost a subconscious act. She had floated an Ursa Minor all the way out of Ponyville. Once the sheet was gone and the locks and restraints concealed beneath. Once the sheet was gone, the locks and restraints concealed beneath would it would be undone in mere moments. Freedom was within her grasp. Nothing happened. Whew, this is terrible. A frown crossed Twilight's face, as the facade of strength and confidence she had crafted slipped. Ooh, need to take a breath. Yawn. Yep. Mhm. Her horn was cold and heavy, and unresponsive. Her frustration matched her incomprehension. Like a sieve, her horn was leaking out the arcane energies as quickly as she pulled them into herself. Gritting her teeth, she tried harder, opening her mind to draw upon exponentially more energy. She strained beneath the weight of it all, an electric fire racing through her mind. She wouldn't give up so easily. Beads of sweat stung her eyes as they rolled down her face. Desperately, she gorged herself on arcane power. Her limbs twitched erratically in the restraints, jerking as if being electrocuted. She had gone beyond her limits. Her nerve impulses were being scrambled by the energy she was trying to bend up to her will. It was a beast of fire and lightning doing its best to break free and turn on her. Damn, that was a terrible voice crack. Anyway. Whew. She pushed away her pain and fear, fighting against it with even greater extortion. She didn't care how dangerous and foolish it was. She was so close. This had to work. The pain in her eyes lessened as the sweat was diluted by fresh tears. Please let it work. A scream of agonized frustration tore its way from her dry throat as she finally lost control. I don't want to scream. What the fuck? Damn it! Ugh. I don't know how to scream. The invisible pattern of arcane power disintegrating like a cobweb caught in a powerful breeze. Twilight collapsed back against her pillow like a puppet with its strings cut. I just woke up, so bear with me. Ooh, mind and body ached with the aftermath of her frantic attempts, leaving her feeling drained and hollow. She gulped down air like a drowning pony, breaking the surface. Oh, my sound effects. Soft groans escaping in between each breath. The sheet hadn't moved. The small patches of sweat and spilled tears marred its pristine surface. She couldn't do it. She couldn't even move a thin square of fabric. Her chest rose and fell with her ragged breaths. I need to get off my stomach. Manipulating the sheet with greater effect than all of her magic talents had accomplished. Cataclysm had accomplished. It was taunting her. Twilight wearily lifted her eyes upwards, and was just able to make out the tip of her horn, or, more accurately, this tip of some sort of cloth wrapped tightly around her horn. In the eddies and currents of arcane energy, it sat like a black hole, only visible once one began looking for nothing rather than something. It was a magical void, a bottomless hole in the web of invisible energy that bound the world. The horrible device was attached to her like a lamprey, leeching away all of her arcane powder. Damn it! Power with an insatiable appetite. The revelation was devastating, a powerful tremor that shook the fabric of Twilight's mind. A dam burst apart inside her. The fear and terror she had been holding back breaking free. She had been silenced. Her captors had cut her off from the one thing that defined her as a pony all her life. Ah, a shuddering moan escaped her lips. Oh, that sounded really sexual. Ah. And Twilight bawled like a frightened filly. her her sweat and tears mingled together as her loud cries filled the small prison. I'm trying my best. The echoes creating a terrified chorus as she surrendered to her despair. She was alone and scared and confused and tired, and all she wanted was someone to wake her from this nightmare and tell her it was going to be alright. No one did. Ooh. How long is this? Oh my god, this chapter. Whatever, I'm sorry. Never mind. Wait, I'm trying to get back to where I was. Sorry.
So, how have you guys been?
Horrible? I hope so. No, it's okay. Christmas was great. Okay. Twilight stared upwards through unseeing eyes. Her lavender coat was matted with snot and sweat and tears. Her eyes, puffy and red from an eternity of crying, itched badly. She tried her best to ignore it. She couldn't do anything else. She was trapped, impotent, and helpless. She couldn't even lift a hoof to rub the remainders of her shame away. What a useless pony she was, unable to even escape from a terrible dream. What had Celestia even seen in her? She could feel bruises beneath the restraints keeping her stationary. They had developed slowly when she had stopped thrashing against them. The gradual increase in pain as they formed was the only clue that time was moving forward. The featureless room was eternal, unchanging. How long has she been trapped in the cream and moss-colored hell? Minutes felt like years. Oh, damn it. She sniffled. Even sleep eluded her. The tumultuous storm of thoughts racing through her mind sabotaged any attempt to create a moment's peace. As soon as her panic had begun to recede, she needed an itch. I need to itch the back of my head, damn it. She had been assaulted by a contradictory cloud of theories and possibilities, each as likely as the last. Nightmare or curse, unseen captors or a creation in her own mind. Take a breath! Like a dog chasing its tail. Her thoughts... Her thoughts circled endlessly, without resolution. The same arguments and the same claims coming up time and again. Twilight didn't care. It was a distraction. The more detached and illogical her thoughts were, the less likely they were to be swallowed up again by the storm of emotions raging just beneath the surface of her mind. Ever since she had opened her eyes, her emotions had been erratic and hard to control. There was a haze over her thoughts, a cold mist that drained the impetus of her mind as though moving slowly underwater. A loud click echoed in the small room. Wait. A loud click. A loud click echoed in the small room. The sudden retort enough to break through Twilight's Morse shell. Stiffly, she lifted her head to peer around her cell. Nothing had changed. Had she imagined this sound? There was a movement outside the door. There was a sudden emotion where she finally managed to bring the door into focus. It was another pony. Relief and apprehension flooded Twilight's system. It could be her captor, or it could be her damn it, or it could be her savior. But at least it was someone else, someone real. She tensed as the door shifted slightly. Wait, damn it. Wait. The muffled jingle of metal. Wait. The muffled jingle of metal was swallowed by a final loud clack as the door was unlocked. With a soft sigh, the door was unlocked. Wait. With a soft sigh, the iron portal swung open to reveal a large stallion, a set of keys clutched in his teeth. Twilight gulped. He was big. His white jacket, a tight fit over his snot in my nose. Okay. Strong build. The dark fur of his coat did nothing to conceal his imposing musculature. He met her expression of fear with one of mild boredom before returning his keys to his belt. She wasn't going to be rescued. Good morning, Twilight Sparkle, a unicorn mare in a lab coat declared cheerfully, as she slipped past the bigger pony. A broad smile plastered on her face. She adjusted the nurse's hat, placed atop her pink mane, as she strode up to Twilight, the silent stallion dutifully following in her wake. I know we're getting you up a bit earlier than usual, but the doctor wanted to have a little chat with today to see how the new treatment is working. He's pretty optimistic after the last few days, and that's some really good news. The nurse gasped softly as she drew close enough to notice Twilight's disheveled appearance. Oh, Twilight! You look like you've been crying. Are you okay? Did some pony have a nightmare? She asked softly. Her horns flashed with a sudden aura, producing a washcloth from one of her pockets. With maternal care, she set about gently wiping away the crust from Twilight's face. A hoof gently caressing Twilight's mane. The display of warmth and familiarity was an unexpected contradiction to everything Twilight had suffered through that morning. She tried to work some moisture into her mouth as the nurse cleaned around her eyes. Who are you? Twilight managed Twilight to whisper. Good job, brain fucking prick. Who are you? Twilight managed to whisper, her voice dry like leaves rubbing together. The white mare's face slipped a little further. You don't remember me? She asked curiously, resuming her cleaning. Twilight's tongue was sandpaper. She voiced a dissecate whisper. Her voice a dissecate... Damn it. Her voice a desiccated whisper. She shook her head instead. The doctor said there might be difficulty in recalling things temporarily, the mare eventually said, as she put the cloth back and removed the stethoscope from around her neck. Don't you worry about it, though, Twilight. You'll remember soon enough. You're kidding me. Go away, woodpeckers! The mare... Don't you worry about it, though, Twilight. You'll remember soon enough. I'm sure of it. The doctor didn't want me answering too many questions, though, so just hold still while I check you out. Once I'm done, we'll get you fed and out of bed. She smiled at her own rhyme. She pulled the sheets back, revealing the padded restraints in the green patient's gown Twilight hadn't known she was wearing. Whew! The nurse set to work with practice ease, the levitating stethoscope ice even through the green cloth of her gown. So, I'm in a hospital? Twilight's voice cracked as she asked a question. The nurse glanced up from taking Twilight's blood pressure. You really don't remember anything at all. Twilight shook her head again. Well then, I guess I should really tell you our names at least. The doctor won't mind. I'm Nurse Ratchet, and this is Silius, one of our orderlies here. She cut off Twilight's next question with a raised hoof. Now, I know you have plenty of other questions, hon, but you'll need to... You'll need to just... Whew, I need to catch my breath. But you'll just have to ask the doctor anything else. He said there might be some side effects, and he thought it'd be best if he'd be there to answer everything himself. Now be a good girl for me and stay still while we get you out of those restraints. Please, Twilight said, relief coloring her hoarse whisper. Without a command, the other two ponies set to work as one. Freedom brought freedom Freedom brought sensation back to her formerly bound whims. Why do I say whims? Limbs, making each bruise twice as painful. Twilight smiled anyway, unable to think of anything as pleasant as being released from her bindings. It's the first relief of all her fears this morning. Nurse Ratchet helped Twilight up into a seat position as Silius stepped out of the room for a moment. Twilight swung her legs over the edge of the cot, taking a moment to stretch out her legs. They were stiff, like a machine that had gone without oil for too long. The orderly returned as Twilight massaged her forearms, holding a plastic tray in his mouth, resting atop it were a bowl. I'm gonna just say was because I suck at reading apparently. Resting atop it was a bowl of porridge, and what was colloquially referred to as a sippy cup. Twilight stared at the cup. It was the kind meant for foals and messy children, a tight cap preventing any unexpected spills. She would have been insulted, but it was filled with water. Ooh, I need to take a breath. Ooh, terrible. Okay. Snatching it off the tray, Twilight wrapped cracked lips around the nozzle. She's making me want to lick my lips. I don't know why. And started sucking down the refreshing liquid. The water was a healing balm for her painfully dry mouth. Rarity would have given her an earful for making such rude and unladylike noises. Not to mention doing so while drinking something meant for fools. Twilight continued to gulp down mouthfuls without a thought for her etiquette, as if afraid to be taken as if afraid it might be taken away from her. It tasted divine. Silius slid the tray onto her lap as Twilight finished off the rest of her water. With regret, Twilight pulled the empty cup from her lips. Thanks, she said apologetically, as she placed it back on the tray. I was really thirsty. Feeling a bit better now, Twilight? Yeah, yes, ma'am. I do feel a bit better. But I'm still so confused, I guess. I don't know where I am, how I got here, or anything else, really. Nurse Ratchet nodded sagely. The doctor said something like this could happen. It's perfectly normal. You've just started out a new treatment, and the first few days are always the roughest. Don't worry, though. We're going to see Dr. Rose right after breakfast, so he could burp. So he could burp on your face. So he could do his examination and answer your questions. Just be sure to eat all your oats. Your medication can be a bit hard on an empty stomach. And you wouldn't want an upset tummy now, would you? Twilight my nose is itchy. Twilight glanced down at her breakfast, a small bowl of grayish porridge and a single plastic spoon. Twilight watched the spoon dumbly as nothing happened. Something tickled the back of her mind, and she tried again to lift the spoon. She blinked, and then gasped, her forelegs leaping to her horn. There was a heavy canvas strapped around her horn like a shelf, small buckles keeping it firmly attached to the bony prostitution. That's what I meant to say. Prostitution. Whatever. Her fears it had been hiding a damaged or crippled horn, which were entirely justified, considering the shock of having awoken in a strange hospital, were banished after a quickly examination. Despite the relief that her innate ability to use magic wasn't permanent, Twilight still frowned when she was able to discern just how to remove it. "What's this around my horn, and how do I take it off?" she asked, shifting her gaze from the tip of her horn to the medical ponies. They were staring at her intently, and Nurse Ratchet wasn't smiling anymore. Silius had imposed himself between the two mares and was watching Twilight intently, the previous apathy on its eyes replaced with the promise of violence. The stallion's entire body was tensed like a runner waiting for the starting pistol. The room grew even smaller. "Twilight, be dear and stop touching that." It wasn't a request. The nurse was trying to keep some of her early pleasantness in her voice, but there was nothing of the concerned caretaker in her tone. Her eyes were ice. She shifted her posture noticeably, a coiled spring prepared to act. Twilight swallowed and jerked her hooves away. "I'm sorry," she apologized profusely, her mouth suddenly dry again. I didn't know." Damn it. The two other ponies visibly realized once her hooves had returned to her lap. No, damn it, not realized. The other two ponies visibly relaxed once her hooves had returned to her lap, the tension slowly draining from the room. Silius took a step backward, but continued to watch her carefully. It was an improvement. At least she didn't feel like she was staring at a bull about to charge. Twilight left the fresh sweat on her brow, not willing to risk wiping it away. Regaining to use the magic would have to wait. Nurse Ratchet favored Twilight with a thin but genuine smile. "I understand, Twilight. You're confused and you don't know what is going on. You just didn't know any better. That's all. No one is angry at you, Twilight. So just finish your breakfast and we can go see the doctor. He'll be able to tell you everything you need to know. Alright, sugar?" The older mare spoke like she had caught a foal reaching for a hot stove. Gotta take a breath. Okay. Twilight just meekly smiled back, her heart still racing. The change in their demeanor had been as unexpected as it had been sudden, and their reactions dumbfounded her. She felt like she was struggling to solve a puzzle with most of the pieces missing. Nothing fit. She needed more answers to try and make sense of it all. It was obvious Nurse Ratchet wasn't willing to answer any questions, so Twilight ignored the patronizing tone and kept quiet. Besides, she was pretty hungry. What was that voice crack? Besides, she was pretty hungry. Twilight cautiously spooned a mouthful of porridge into her mouth. It tasted exactly like it looked. Bland, lumpy, and lukewarm. Like the simple two-tone paint on the walls. The drab food was a clear sign of a government institution where the bottom line was the most important factor of budget. It was brought to mind memories of humorless school meals prepared in huge batches by equality. Humorless lunchmares, all concerned with customary culinary values like flavor and texture when they had a few hundred ungrateful little foals to feed. I am sorry, I am halfway blind. I can't read it. I can't. If I zoom in, it makes it look weird. It wouldn't be showing up in Sugar Cube Corner's menu anytime soon, but it was edible. And before long, Twilight found herself staring into an empty bowl. Now that's a good girl. Nurse Ratchet said as Silius took the tray with his mouth. Now, how about we stand you up? Don't worry, darling. I'll support you. There we go. Nice and easy. Following her directions, Twilight eased herself off the edge of the bed and planted each hoof with deliberate care, leaning heavily against the other mare. Her sore legs wobbled slightly as her weight shifted from the nurse to her own legs. She avoided an awkward fall. Tiles didn't look very soft. Twilight smiled Twilight smiled weakly. So, now what? Just stay close to me, dearie. Obediently, Twilight followed Nurse Ratchet, feeling a weight lift from her mind as she passed through the open metal door. She wasn't caged anymore. Just beyond the door, another orderly stood beside a polished metal cart. Silius handed him the empty tray before taking up position behind the two mares. Twilight swung her head from side to side as the two ponies escorted her through the winding corridors. The hallway was painted in the now familiar two-tone paint scheme, creamy white above the soft moss green. Other doors, like the one she had just escaped past, were evenly spaced along the walls. There were other ponies trapped inside them. Were there other ponies trapped inside them as well? Nurse Ratchet drew further ahead as Twilight glanced through the windows as she had passed them. But the dark rooms revealed nothing. The three traveled without speaking. The only noise was of the only noise the clip-clop of their hooves on the white tiles. Ahead of them was another orderly, a tangerine mare, stationed at the hallway's only exit. After a customary glance at Ratchet's identification, she pressed a button on the wall, and the double doors unlocking with a soft click. Not just an orderly then, but a guard. Twilight eyed the mare's truncheon nervously as she followed the nurse through the doors. Hey. Okay, I'm losing my voice. Sorry. My god damn it. The halls beyond were nothing like the prison she had escaped. Although painted in the same boring colors, there were no heavy iron doors or Spartan cells inside. It was a proper hospital, although no pony would ever call a hospital warm and inviting. The rooms Twilight managed to peek in were fit for a princess compared to where she had woken up. After a short distance, the doors gave way to naked windows. Twilight's heart skipped a beat, and she held back a sudden urge to cry out in relief. She could see outside, and I feel very like I've lost my voice. I have lost my voice. I can't feel my voice. I'm gonna have to end this video. Oh, damn it. Sorry. I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry. I need to end this video here. Comment if you want more, and I might do other Grimdark, not even just My Little Pony fanfictions, just fanfiction in general. So, have a nice day. Yeah.